welcome to another episode of Career Pinnacle. And as promised, today we are with another guest. Today, our topic of discussion is going to be higher education, and we will be discussing some interesting aspects of it. Some people say that education is preparation for life. Others argue that education is life itself. Whatever its nature, the purpose of education is clear. It is to replace empty minds with open ones. The job market of the future will reward people not for their degrees only, but for the excellent communication, writing, analytical, creative, and problem-solving skills that they possess. Employers will expect a workforce which is capable of delivering on their specific roles while presenting immaculate soft skills. And that is where a good university education becomes extremely useful. To give us a greater insight into the importance of higher education, I am joined today by a very special guest. She is the Assistant Director of Graduate Recruitment at the University of Albany, my good friend, Chloe Glenn. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the location of your university, where it's located, and what's the climate there throughout the year, and what's the weather like right now?
So we are a public university located in Albany, New York, which is about 2.5 hours from New York City. We're technically in an area called upstate New York, if anybody's familiar with that. We are, like I said, a public university located in the city of Albany. The weather is very beautiful. We have 4 seasons. Right now it is a little warm, so definitely this time of year, getting closer to July is probably our hottest month. But the rest of the year, again, we have a beautiful autumn, lots of fall colors, winter with snow. So it really is a beautiful area. And the lovely part of it is that we have, with people that live here experience the city, obviously, but then you can be out in nature in probably 5 or 10 minutes. So it's a wonderful balance, a wonderful community. And I just feel very, very lucky to live here.
So when you are saying the hottest month of the year, what kind of maximum and minimum temperatures are we looking at?
So the maximum is probably around 95 or so. It feels a little bit warmer with the humidity, and that's degrees Fahrenheit. And then probably our lowest temperature in the winter, I've seen it get close to maybe 5 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there. But that's, again, those are extremes. It's usually somewhere in the middle. We're usually pretty average. So it's usually pretty comfortable throughout the year. I used to live in Arizona, so this is actually a lot better than that, in terms of temperature. But usually it's very temperate, very mild. So.
Okay, since you brought up Arizona, so I'll tell my viewers that Chloe is originally from Arizona. And how does New York compare with Arizona?
So they are very different. So obviously, the geography of the US, one is on one side, one is on the other. I think in terms of obviously, it looks very different. So where I was raised in Arizona is kind of closer to the desert area. So a lot of cactus, things like that. New York is very different looking, a lot of trees, a lot of forests. I think that the area, just in general, cultures are a little bit different. So just again, just the feeling of it is a little bit different. So a lot of people think across the US, it kind of feels the same, but different regions of the United States, again, are a little bit different, just depending on, who lives there and kind of the history of it. So that's what's been so wonderful. And it's a real privilege to be able to have lived in different parts of the US and just to kind of see that firsthand. Again, just kind of the history and how it affects the daily life. So
we'll talk about the university in a bit, but compared to New York City, I believe Albany is a different city in upstate New York. And compared to New York, how do the economies of the two cities compare?
So obviously, Albany is much smaller. So we are the capital of New York. So a lot of people think it's New York City, but it's actually Albany. So we are the center of government, which is really wonderful if students are wanting to learn more about legislation, policy. So this is a really great area to learn that. Obviously, there are some opportunities in New York City, but this is really an area where people can learn more about that. This area, again, is it is a little bit more open, not as tall skyscrapers. It looks very, very different. Again, fewer people. It's a little bit more spread out. Obviously, New York City, it's much more close in, a lot more people. Public transport's a little different up here, but there is still opportunities available for that. So it looks very different. A lot of people think all of New York sort of looks like New York City, and it does not. Depending on where you are, upstate New York, Western New York, it all looks a little bit different.
Yes, because New York is a city, but New York is also the state. So in any state, there are different kinds of cities and different kinds of landscapes and different kinds of people. But obviously, you look after the graduate schools. First, my brief question will be a little bit about undergraduate school, and then we'll talk about graduate school. So when you're looking at an undergraduate application, what are the things that you are looking at?
So I do not review the undergrad applications. However, the people that do look at it are looking at, again, in general, past academic performance, I think, is really important. If they have taken higher level classes or classes within, their particular major, if they have experience within the major that they're trying to get into, that's always very helpful. If they show, sometimes they do have to write a personal statement or just kind of an explanation on why they're applying. Not always, but sometimes they will include that. And so, kind of including some information about, why you're applying to the university and just kind of your motivations for that. But we do not look too closely at test scores. We are a test optional university, so it's you can submit them if you have them, but things like the SAT, ACT are not required. But again, if you have them, you can submit them. But again, we're not looking, and this is the same for graduate too, we're not looking at one particular thing per se. It really is the whole application, how the student kind of presents on the application. And again, it's not one particular thing that we're looking at, it's just the overall strength of it.
So when you are talking about a composite personality at the graduate level, what is a typical composite personality that will appeal to you?
So it really depends. There's not a real kind of, cookie cutter type thing. It's not like we're looking for one particular type of student. I think that's what makes our university really, really great, is that we do look for students with, different experiences, different backgrounds. We're not just looking for one student that thinks a certain way. I think in general, how, you would come across in your personal statement or potentially in an interview that you do with an academic program is, really just your curiosity. We are a research university. That's our main focus is research. And so we're constantly asking questions. We're constantly kind of leaning into that critical thinking aspect. So I think a student that really looks at that, who maybe comes from that background or just has that type of personality where they are questioning, where they are looking at different options, where they are thinking in new and different ways. We don't want someone who, is trying to fit the mold all the time. We want people that think outside of the box. So I think that if people are interested in that, if that's sort of where, their personality sort of is, or not even that, if they want to grow to be that, if they're not that right now, but they want to grow into that type of person, I think Albany is a great choice for people that have those types of goals in mind.
So what are the different departments at your university, and what are the student preferences? I mean, do students usually prefer going into STEM courses or liberal arts courses? Tell us a little bit about your faculties, your academics.
It really is a mix. So I will say that at the undergrad level, there's about 60 different programs that you can choose from. At the graduate level, there's about 150. So it is a huge mix. So we have plenty of STEM programs. So we have some of our newest STEM programs that we just added within the last year are our nanoscale science, nanoscale engineering. We also have a very popular computer science program, information science, digital forensics, and cybersecurity. So there's a lot of kind of AI focus, a lot of, kind of STEM research focus at UAlbany. There's also a really strong public health program. We have really strong connections with the US Department of Health, New York State Department of Health. So there's a lot of opportunities for research there. Public administration, business. It really is a wide range of things that students can go into. And, there really is kind of a focus on students sort of, choosing their own path and looking at research in different ways. And like I said, kind of doing those critical thinking skills and doing projects that are unique and different. So there's lots of opportunities for interdisciplinary work, working with other faculty, other schools. So, we want that collaboration and that sort of attitude on campus where, departments and schools work together.
So if I were to use some marketing jargon here, if I were to ask you what is your unique selling proposition and what makes you different from other universities, what makes you unique, how will you answer that question?
I would say what I have really noticed throughout my time at UAlbany is just the community. I think that is something, as I kind of mentioned before, that attitude of collaboration and working together. I think that is huge in our university. I think that we are trying through different research and different projects to answer really fundamental questions. We're looking at climate change, we're looking at AI, we're looking at medicine, we're looking at entrepreneurship. So it's really an opportunity for students to come in and have that collaboration between faculty, between different schools on our campus. And I think just the community is really pushing students to have those types of experiences and have those, moments where they can work independently and come up with their own ideas and have a voice. And that's what I really love is that, students at UAlbany, they have that opportunity to have that voice and they have that opportunity to work with people who are just top of their field. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that there is so much support for students on this campus.
How important do you think liberal arts education is these days in a world of AI, in a world dominated by technology and information technology? Where do things like liberal arts, philosophy, literature, where do they fit in? This is not a university specific question. I don't want your view on this.
So I'm a little biased. I come from a liberal arts background. I studied political science in college, and I think that you have to have it. I think that there isn't one or the other, or one is better than the other. I think that if you're going to be answering questions in STEM, you do need to have the skills that liberal arts teaches you. So I think there always has to be a balance. If I were in charge, I would love to have students have experience in both, throughout their college career. I know it's difficult depending on what they study, but I think having a little bit of both, even at the graduate level, when you're starting to specialize in a particular field, even at that level, still having the ability to have that experience in either STEM or in liberal arts, depending on where you're at. I think that you need the skills that are offered by both of those fields, and they can work together. They can work together, beautifully. We have a Center for Humanities, Arts, and Technoscience that is about that. It's about STEM and humanities working together and liberal arts working together. So we have that at UAlbany. That's something that we really focus on. And so I think that the way that you think in those two fields or in those two areas can really make you a strong critical thinker in general, strong human in general. So I think that we need both, definitely.
And of course, I think what liberal arts does is what STEM does is it teaches you what to do and how to do. Whereas the liberal arts stream, that really teaches you what the purpose of everything is. Why do you do what you are doing? Let me ask you a question about diversity. How important do you think diversity is on a campus, and how much does Albany promote that?
So we are really a leader in social mobility. That's something that we really, look at, and helping students from different backgrounds sort of achieve in, a variety of different ways. One of the things that I am most proud of is that University at Albany is part of the State University of New York. So that's a collection of different campuses across New York State. We are the most diverse of any of those 64 campuses in New York State. So that's something that I personally and everyone else is hugely proud of. And we also really value the gifts and the talents and the experience and the knowledge of international students. I think that is something that has made our university just so brilliant and bright. We have so many talented students that come from all areas of the world. And I think that, the attitudes that international students come in with, in terms of just the bravery to, leave your home and attempt this new adventure of studying in the U.S. I think just that attitude and that determination, that adds so much to the university community. And we hope we give something back to them. We hope we give our love and support and community to them in return. But they truly add so much to our university. So I think that the university as a whole values that, and it's something that we hope to continue to see more of, and students from Pakistan obviously as well.
Okay, there's one thing that we experience here, and that is that previously a lot of students could go to the United States because they could afford an American education. And now since 1986, American colleges have become 550% more expensive than they were at the start of 1980. That means that it's a challenge for our students. So how are American colleges responding to this? Is there any plan to scholarship more people into your programs and into your universities, given the current situation? I understand that that the United States is also facing some economic challenges, but then what's the plan?
It really depends on the university. I think that there are more discussions about the idea of especially given what international students, again, contribute to the university, what they, give to the universities. There is starting to be more discussion about that. And again, it will probably take form in different ways. I would assume that hopefully within the next few years, universities will start offering more scholarships, more opportunities for assistantships, particularly at the graduate level. I think that, especially with the PhD students, people that are really trying to become experts in a particular field, having that funding available is so important. And I think that, universities are looking obviously at international students as well, and, what the experience that they're bringing in, what they can contribute. Again, I cannot speak for the whole of the United States, but I do know that just the discussions that I hear, I think that universities are starting to see that it is, such a valuable thing to continue to have international students come to the United States, feel comfortable in the US. It is very difficult, I think, at the university level because there's a lot of things to balance. There's a lot of factors you have to think about. But the more that I've kind of been in this field, the more I've started to hear that has started to become more of a priority, and seeing international students as, again, we have to assist them. It has to be a part of the, whole plan. So again, I can't speak for all of them, but just from what I've been hearing, that is starting to become more of something that is talked about, particularly because a lot of countries are struggling right now. Not just the US, not just Pakistan, but, it's kind of a global thing right now. So I think that the more discussions that we can have about that, the better, because everybody is kind of in that same struggle right now.
When we look at the universities, it's a very wide spectrum of. That's my observation. Maybe you will disagree with that, but different universities promote different values. First and foremost, I'd like your view on that. Do you think that is correct? And secondly, how important is it for students to align themselves with the values of their universities when they apply?
I think that's true. I mean, I think that every university has different attitudes in terms of, community and different ways that they sort of show it, things that they promote as important. I think that every university is a little bit different. And that's what's so nice is that when international students are looking at the US, they have, thousands of options really to kind of, look to see where maybe, their values or the things that they currently hold as important would align with a university that they're choosing. I don't necessarily think that students should change themselves or act differently just to get into a university. I think that, when they are looking at different universities, they're in the process of interviewing those universities too. It's not just us interviewing them. It's them interviewing us and finding out, okay, I have these values. I have, ideas of what is important. Is this university going to promote that? And also, I think students should look at the idea of, does this university bring me out of my comfort zone? Are they going to teach me things? Are they going to allow me to grow? Are they going to teach me different values that maybe I don't understand right now, or I would like to learn more about? So I think that it is a balance. I don't think it's just one side teaching the other. I think that, students come in and they teach us, they change our values for the better. They make us better. So I think it is a collaboration. I think it's always sort of a teamwork type thing between a student and the university. So I don't think students should necessarily change. But I think that, they need to do their research and find out what is, what speaks true for them and what makes them feel most at peace, most at ease, and also a place that will challenge them too. I think there, again, as I said, there needs to be that balance.
And in the US, there are usually the universities fall in different categories. So some universities are considered very competitive. Some are considered moderately competitive. Some are very good, but they say that we are the university of reach. We do not want to make ourselves very difficult to get into. So can you give us a little more perspective on that, and where do you stand when it comes to or can you be categorized as any one of those in the first place?
I think that we are moderately competitive. It depends on the programs, especially at the graduate level. So there are some programs that are, they're a little bit more competitive. How you can normally tell that is if the deadline is earlier. That's sort of a sign that if the deadline for a program is earlier, it usually means they're a little bit more competitive. So that's just a way you can tell. In terms of, when students are looking at different schools, I would say applying to a mix of these is probably going to be your best bet. So, looking at schools that are probably in easy reach, is something that you can easily get into, that you meet the qualifications, perfectly. Other schools that may be a little bit more of a challenge, again, something moderate, something in the middle. And then also looking at schools that, maybe are a little bit more of a challenge to get into, or maybe, you are going to have to stretch a little bit when you do apply for that. So I think that when students look at different options, having a mix of where, they shouldn't be just applying to one school. I always say that, don't just apply to one school, have a mix, have a variety, so that, again, you have those options available to you.
Relating to the previous thing that we were discussing about diversity, there was a very interesting incident on one of your campuses in the 1990s. There was a civil war in Africa in Rwanda, and there were two tribes, the Hutus and the Tutsis, and they couldn't stand one another in their own country. But there were a lot of students who had come from there, and they were on your campuses. So the day the ceasefire was signed between those two warring factions, the Burundis and the Hutus and the Tutsis, they were hugging each other and embracing each other on the American campuses. So it's like there are so many things which actually the things that take us together, that bring us together, are actually way more than the things that take us away from each other, and that is what a good university education makes us realize. So, but all good things come at some cost. So let us discuss the cost of education, the undergraduate. First and foremost, the duration of undergraduate studies is 4 years. In some universities, it can be done in 3 years as well. So if that is possible, do tell us. And what is the per annum cost? If you could give us some idea about that at both graduate and undergraduate level.
Yes, so you can, just to answer your first question, you can complete your undergrad earlier. You can take, credits in advance of that. So you can, I have seen students graduate in 3.5 years. Again, it just kind of depends on your program. In terms of tuition, so this I'm going to be saying per year, so this is per year. For undergrad is around 30 to 31,000. Funding is mostly merit funding. So again, looking at past academic performance, looking at the overall application, the strength of the application, that sort of thing. The maximum merit funding for undergrad is around 18,000, and that can be renewed every year. So depending on your eligibility, depending on your grades, things like that, you can apply to have that scholarship renewed. You can also, in terms of the graduate, at the graduate level, you can apply for kind of a variety of scholarships. We have some scholarships that, again, are based on merit, looking at past, GPA, academic performance, that sort of thing. At the graduate level, there are also what's called assistantships. And for anybody listening who doesn't know what an assistantship is, it's a teaching or a research position that is offered through the academic program that you're applying to, and it can assist with the cost of tuition. So those can vary depending on program, because every program has a little bit of different amounts of funding, essentially. Sometimes at the PhD level, they can cover everything. At the master's level, they will usually only cover part of tuition. But again, I'm just speaking from the University at Albany. Every school is a little bit different. Everyone is going to have different scholarships, different assistantships, different opportunities. International students can also work on campus, which can be helpful as well. They can get on-campus jobs. I believe the limit is 20 hours per week under their visa that they can work on campus. So that's another way to kind of supplement again. So I would really suggest more than anything that students look at a variety of different funding sources. So you're going to be looking at the funding options through the university itself, but you're also going to be looking at any funding options that are available through the program, particularly at the graduate level. That's a big thing, that it could be that you get an opportunity at the universities level and then also an opportunity at the program level. So always ask those questions when you're applying, because there could be different sources of funding that you can take advantage of depending on, again, program you're in, university you're in, all of that information.
Yes, and one thing that students need to do is they need to talk to their counselor in university. That's really important, because in America, especially, students are treated on a case-to-case basis. If you can convince the counselor, then maybe other opportunities and other doors will also open. So I will talk about PhD in a little bit. But when we are talking about the cost of stay, which means apart from the education, apart from the tuition, the cost of staying there, meals, then what kind of budget is the student looking at, and what is the minimum wage right now? What's the going minimum wage there?
Yeah, so with the kind of, I guess, living expenses sort of in general, so we estimate at the graduate level for that to be around 8,000, so 8,000 to 9,000 per year. And again, that's just an estimate. So some students come in and they are living with, maybe 1 or 2 roommates, and they're able to split the cost of that, cost of rent. So they are able to potentially have a little bit lower than that. So it's not a hard and fast, it will always be 8,000. It could be more, it could be less, but that's usually the estimate that we give to students. In terms of the minimum wage, in general, it depends on, again, kind of the industry that you're in. But in terms of just generally in New York, it is around like $14 to $15. And again, that will just kind of depend on the industry that you're in, and especially after you graduate, obviously. But in general, the minimum wage in New York, at least, is around 15.
And that is why, even though many universities like yours are test optional, I always advise students to give the SAT, because if you've given the SAT and if you have a good score in that, then two things happen. One, you can negotiate for a higher scholarship package, if I may use that term. And also it shows your visa officer that you are a serious student and you are going there to study, and that you will come back to your country, which is very, very important. As far as I'm concerned, people should go out of Pakistan, they should study, they should get some experience and come back and serve their country. That's very important as far as I'm concerned. But yes, if they find a good job there, or if they find someone they can live with, then that's another matter. So let's talk about one thing which is very close to the student's heart, and that is extracurricular activities and life apart from studies. So what does Albany offer in that regard?
So we have around 300 different groups, student groups on campus, and many of them are managed and run and facilitated by international students, which is really wonderful. A lot of them were started by international students. So again, around 300 different student groups that students can get involved with. And these really range. These can be athletics, these can be arts, these can be, all sorts of things in between. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved on campus, getting involved in, campus government, doing, again, being involved in like planning committees for events on campus. There's a lot of ways that students just in general outside of studies can, again, have that social time. In terms of getting involved just with research projects and with faculty, that's something that is usually a part of all of the programs at the university. So in any program that they get involved in, they'll normally have at least either a research opportunity, an internship, a clinical practice, depending on the program that they're in. So there's going to be a lot of time where they have interaction with, individuals outside of the classroom, whether it's in a social setting or a learning setting. There's just lots of opportunities for that.
And you are a political scientist, and I am a political creature. So I cannot not talk about some political experience that students can get. Is there student government there, and do students get involved in activities, and do they have opportunity to work with the legislature or with the state senators or state representatives?
Yes, so student government is absolutely an option for students at Albany. We have a student working in our office right now who is involved in that. He's very busy all the time planning events and kind of discussing different needs of the community at Albany, which is really exciting. In general, yes, you do have those opportunities for internships at the legislature. So again, if you're wanting to get into political science, if you're wanting to get into public administration, Albany is a really great choice just because we are in the seat of government in New York State. So there are many, many students who have internships in the legislative settings. They get to learn from different policymakers. They get to see how the legislative process works. And so it is very exciting to see students have that sort of opportunities at that government level. So definitely, there's lots of options there.
Okay, I have a question related to two things which are peculiar to the United States, and that is number one, Juris Doctor, and number two, medicine. So the education track in Pakistan and England is very different from that in the United States. If you want to become a doctor, or if you want to become a lawyer. So first, let's talk about the law. If a student wants to do law, then what's the path after A-level?
So normally in the United States, they have pre-law programs. So there are many universities that have these opportunities where you can go on almost like a pre-law track. And this is the same as medicine, like a pre-medicine track that will sort of prepare you for this particular field. So you do the pre-law, pre-medicine first, and it can vary depending on the number of years. And then you would go into medical school or law school. And normally there are certain tests that you have to take before you apply to medical school or law school. So in the United States, the medical test is the MCAT. For the the law school, it's the LSAT. So there are kind of tests that you have to take in order to apply for these programs. But again, there are many, many different options throughout the US in terms of the school that you go to, the types of experiences you get. You can go and become a physician's assistant, which is, kind of a shorter amount of time than becoming a doctor in terms of the medical field. You can carry on from the medical degree and get a specialization. So again, there's lots of different options in terms of how far your career will take, how far you want to study. But yes, there is that sort of in between where you do the pre-law or pre-medicine before you begin that track through the actual law school or medical school.
And Juris Doctor, is that equal to a master's degree or a PhD degree?
It is technically closer to a PhD. Yeah, so that is what it is considered. I mean, a lot of times, the lawyers don't necessarily go by doctor a lot of times, but, that is still with the amount of study that you have. It is sort of its own separate title. So a Juris Doctor really is in the United States. That just means you're in the field of law. You're in some type of field of law. But again, it is closer. If you want to do the equivalent, it is closer to a PhD.
And how far is it true? Because I have heard this all my life. How far is it true that if you study law in the United States, then you cannot practice anywhere else in the world, and you cannot even practice in other states in the United States? I mean, is this true? And if how do students get around this problem?
So I would not be able to speak for every country because depending on, again, the rules for every country, it's a little bit different. In terms of practicing in different states, from what I understand, and again, I'm not an expert in this, from what I understand is that you can practice in different states. You just may have to take certain exams in order to practice in a particular state. So every state will have different sort of rules in terms of, what they require from an individual who wants to practice law in their state. So let's say you get a law degree from New York and you want to do law in Colorado. So again, you may have to do some sort of transfer or exam process that would allow you to get a license in the state of Colorado. It will really depend though. So again, I would ask students to do their own research on this. I'm not an expert on this, but it is definitely something that students can do. It just may take a little bit more work. I mean, lawyers move to different states all the time. And so they do have to go through that process of getting up to the licensure that would allow them to be in that particular state and practice law in that particular state. When it comes to different countries, that is a whole different thing. So that may be something that before students, go and study in the US for law or medicine, that they talk to different professional organizations within their country or different professionals that are already doing that type of work and say, what is it like there? How does it work? Do you have any colleagues that studied in the US and came back? Because they will be able to kind of understand from there what they need to do and what they need to prepare for.
And needless to say, law is a very rewarding career anywhere in the United States. I mean, I remember there was this lawyer in Missouri named Clark Clifford, and he was a friend of JBL's. And JBL said to him, this guy, McNamara, he makes less money even though he's from Harvard. You're a hick lawyer from Missouri, and last year you made $1 million. He said, sir, that's what 10% came to. I didn't plan for that. That's what 10% came to. So yeah, okay, I have 3 minutes left and I want to devote these last 3 minutes to discussing PhD. So if a student has done a master degree in one discipline, let's say business management. Now, business management 20 years ago was something like AI today. It was the in thing. Today that's not the case. So now, if a student wants to switch, do research, do PhD in something completely different, let's say in international relations, political science, what's the procedure for that? How do universities cater to that need?
So it can sometimes be a little bit challenging because PhD is really, as you know, as a lot of students know, it is a specialization. I mean, whatever you're doing at the PhD level, it is only going to be in that particular field that you chose. There's not going to be anything else. If you have done your master's in something completely different, where there is really no similarity, then what I would say, first of all, is to talk to the university that you're applying to, because some universities are a little bit more open. They say, okay, you have this background, but can you talk about any transferable skills that you learned in your master's program that can apply to, experience in the PhD? You may not have experience in that particular field, but, we can work with you. Other schools are going to be far, far more strict and say, no, you have to have a master's in, let's say, chemistry. If you want to go for a PhD in chemistry, it has to be like that. So every school is going to be a little bit different. In terms of doing like a different, program from your master's or pursuing a different program from your master's, again, it can be done. You just have to really research a little bit. I would say it is easier between bachelor's and master's. So if you decide at the bachelor's level, I want to do something completely different and go for a different master's, that is a little bit easier than from master's to PhD. So normally at the PhD level, you have to have some type of background in what you're trying to pursue, or at least be able to show that you are, at least have experience in research. That's a big thing, is having experience in research, having that sort of, knowledge about that process. So I think, again, it's easier between bachelor's and master's to switch. Master's and PhD is much more difficult. It can be done. But again, you do have to show that you have some sort of connection with the field that you're trying to get into.
People from my batch who did bachelor's and master's with me, when we sit together, what we say to each other is, look, we have so much experience, yes, but this is very secret. I should not even be saying this on a live program, but this is what they said. The marketing books that we studied, the management theories that we studied, they are not relevant anymore. Everything has changed. Marketing today is nothing without digital marketing, and honestly, we don't even know what that is. I mean, I don't know. I know marketing. I know the piece of marketing. I know this. I know that, but I don't know that, and this is true of each and every one of those people who graduated with me. They are now feeling uneasy about a few things because the younger generation knows so much, and we are. If we do not study and if we do not get these new degrees, then we'll be redundant very soon. So that's a problem. So how what is the cost of PhD, and what's the duration, and how can a student finance his PhD education?
So in general, for graduate tuition, I don't know if I said this earlier. I know I mentioned undergrad, but for graduate tuition is around $32,000 per year, and it's the same at PhD level. So between master's and PhD, that is total. So that is living expense, that's tuition, that's any other fees, is that $32,000 per year. When it comes to funding for PhDs, I will say that in the United States, on average, it is a little bit easier to get funding at the PhD level than at the master's. Partially, this is because PhDs, it just takes a longer time. So you kind of need that funding to sort of keep going. I have seen people complete their PhD relatively quickly in 4 years, but most of the time it's going to be around 6 years. So sometimes 8 years if you're really, again, it will depend based on the projects you're working on, the thesis you're working on, research you're doing, faculty that you're working with. It really will depend on that sort of project that you choose for that PhD research. So again, time can vary, usually between 4 to 6 years. And in that time, having access to assistantships, that's going to really be the main form of funding a lot of times. So what I mentioned earlier is asking the university about those assistantships, researching from the beginning if they have those available, and also finding out, do you have an assistantship for just your first or second year of your PhD, or does it last the entire time that you are studying? So again, looking at the details of this and making sure that when you do apply to a university, you understand, especially at the PhD level, where the funding is going to come from, and if you have what the application procedures are essentially.
So with the assistantship, what percentage of the cost will be covered?
It will vary by program. So there are some assistantships that will cover all of tuition, that they have full funding, covers everything. Sometimes it will be, they will cover partial tuition. So part of the tuition will be covered, but then there will also be a stipend available. So like a living stipend. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes you can have full tuition and a stipend. So that's why, because every school is different, because every program is different, having students talk to the admissions program and ask, what is the funding going to look like the year that I'm applying? What does the average PhD student have? What does their funding package look like? And how long does that funding package last? Is it just a year? Is it all 4 years? And that can really allow students to make a good decision based on, what is available for that program.
Okay, that was very informative, and I do hope that students will benefit from what you've told them. Just one last question would be on a personal note. When you studied political science, why did you not choose to run for political office? Why did you go into education?
So my undergraduate, my bachelor's was in political science. My master's was in social work. So I did make a turn. I would say that I wanted a career that kept me close to my community. So I think sometimes when you get into the political sphere, it gets you further and further away from the people that you're serving. And for me, I wanted to be just around everybody. So I hope that eventually more politics will kind of head in that direction where it is closer to the community, where it is more grassroots, where there is more of that sort of support for that. And I think there's starting to be, which is really exciting. But that was the reason, is that I wanted to just, have more connections to my community. So it worked out. And education is a great way to be connected to the community.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chloe. And it's always a pleasure speaking to you, learning from you, understanding things from your perspective. And that is what I would like the students to do as well. Do your research, ask questions before you make decisions. Please keep in mind there is a university for everybody. If you research, you will find one. Don't give up on your dreams. Just pursue them, and hopefully you'll be able to realize them. Yes, education can be costly sometimes, but then what's the alternative? So with that, thank you very much indeed, and we will keep in touch. And thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so
much. In
Pakistan. Yes. And I just want to say that every time I have been to Pakistan, it's just been one of the best experiences of my life. The students, the people, everyone, it's just a wonderful experience. So I very much appreciate your invitation to talk with you today. And again, I hope to see you all soon back in Pakistan.
I thank you very much for taking time out first thing in the morning. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm really thankful for your time. Thank you very much.